Good evening, jolly tea drinkers. Welcome back to Bedtime Tea, one more steep before sleep. Grab your teacup, settle in, and enjoy a relaxing bedtime story that will help you feel calm and ready to drift off into a nice, peaceful sleep. Ready to begin? Tonight's story is The Case of the Missing TEAS. In a charming corner of the town of Wellington, nestled between a bakery and a bookstore, stood the Tea Cafe, a small shop known for its unique hand-blended teas, delicious baked goods, and cheerful atmosphere. Alina Messina, fondly known as Miss T, was the humble owner. Every morning she baked mouth-watering pastries and brewed fresh batches of her unique tea blends. Always the delicious aroma filled the air both inside and outside of the cafe, drawing customers from near and far. For Miss T, every day in Wellington was a wonderful day. But today, something seemed a little bit different. Miss T inspected her shelves with a frown, speaking out loud to herself. Where's the lavender chamomile blend? And the strawberry coconut green tea? I could have sworn I stocked these yesterday. Miss T absent-mindedly scratched her face as she noticed more and more gaps in her neatly organized shelves. Tea tins were missing, as if they all simply vanished. And come to think of it, this was not the first time it had happened. Miss T stared at the shelves in confusion just as the bell above the door to the cafe chimed. Enter Sean Hansen, or as the regulars liked to call him, Mr. Coffee. Despite his name, Sean wasn't opposed to tea. In fact, he had developed a genuine appreciation for it, thanks to Alina. Mr. Coffee looked over at Miss T and playfully grinned. Morning, Miss T. What's the matter? Forgot where you placed the hibiscus again? Miss T sighed and half smiled at Mr. Coffee, saying, Ha, ha, ha. Well, it's funny you should say that, because some of my teas are missing again. Mr. Coffee's grin faded as he saw the genuine concern on Miss T's face. They'd known each other for a little while now, ever since the first day that he had wandered into the tea cafe one rainy afternoon, completely fed up with his usual coffee spots. Somewhere along the way, a friendship had started to blossom, and their daily chats became something that he looked forward to each day. Seeing how upset she appeared to be, Mr. Coffee tried to ease her tension by using a slightly teasing tone of voice. A thief who has the nerve to mess with our Miss T? Sounds like a mystery, and you know I like a good mystery. Amused, Miss T replied, Are you offering your detective services, Mr. Coffee? Mr. Coffee tilted his head, pretending to consider. Then he smiled and said, Maybe, but only if it comes with a cup of that ginger peach tea that I like. Feeling inspired, Miss T replied, Wait, would you seriously be willing to help me? This is the second time that this has happened, and I'm starting to wonder what's going on. I'm willing to help in any way that I can, replied Mr. Coffee, clapping his hands. So, where do we start? And so the friendly duo set out to solve the mystery of the missing teas. Little did they know, the case would be more complicated than either of them expected. The next day, Miss T and Mr. Coffee began their investigation the old-fashioned way by questioning the daily customers. First, there was Mrs. Finnegan, an elderly regular who was known to not so accidentally place a tea bag or two in her purse each time she came to the cafe. Oh, I would never steal from you, Alina, said Mrs. Finnegan defensively while waving her cane. I'd just like to sample the teas before I buy them. Mrs. Finnegan, Miss T replied, when you take something without paying for it first, it's not considered a sample, it's considered stealing. Well, I am not a thief, Mrs. Finnegan huffed, and I am offended that you would even think to accuse me of such a heinous crime. Mrs. Finnegan, please calm down, Mr. Coffee soothingly interjected. All we wanted to know was if you have seen anyone suspicious around the cafe lately, because we noticed some missing items. Well, it wasn't me, Miss Finnegan shouted. We are not blaming you for anything, Mrs. Finnegan, Miss T insisted. We are simply trying to figure out what is going on around here. We do not think that you are the thief. Oh, Mrs. Finnegan replied, seemingly pacified. Well, in that case, I haven't seen anything strange as of yet. Doing her best to hide her frustration, Miss T replied, Thank you. Thank you. Now, would you like a cup of tea on the house? Unable to hide her elation, Mrs. Finnegan said, For free? And it won't be considered stealing? Miss T sighed and replied, No, Mrs. Finnegan. It's not stealing. I'm giving it to you for free. Well then, yes, please, she said excitedly. One Earl Grey on the house coming right up, said Miss T, walking away. Can it be an Earl Grey Supreme? Mrs. Finnegan asked, stopping Miss T in her tracks. Turning around, Miss T replied, Of course, one Earl Grey Supreme coming right up. Just as Miss T turned around and began to walk again, she was again stopped by another request from Mrs. Finnegan, who said, With lemon and sugar? With lemon and sugar, Miss T repeated. She turned around to walk, but once again halted in her tracks. And a dash of milk? Turning around again, Miss T repeated, And a dash of milk. Will there be anything else, Mrs. Finnegan? Miss T replied, using her brightest smile to fight exasperation. Oh, no, dear, Mrs. Finnegan said, waving her hand, and just as Miss T began to move away, Mrs. Finnegan added, Except maybe one of those freshly baked cranberry scones. Do you have any of those this morning, dear? Miss T, clasping her hands together, replied, Yes, I do. Coming right up. And she quickly turned and made her way into the kitchen area before Mrs. Finnegan could speak another word. She is such a dear, isn't she? Asked Mrs. Finnegan as she turned to face Mr. Coffee, who was still staring in the direction that Miss T just vacated, smiling absent-mindedly. Oh, but I'm sure you already know that. I'm sorry, Mr. Coffee said as he turned his attention to Mrs. Finnegan. Oh, nothing. Mrs. Finnegan smiled knowingly at him. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, Mrs. Finnegan, replied Mr. Coffee as he swiftly left the cafe. Later that day, Miss T and Mr. Coffee visited the bakery next door to the cafe to speak with Charlie, the owner of the bakery, who had once admitted to being jealous of the high number of customers at the tea cafe. Scoffing, Charlie replied, I might admit to trying to steal a scone recipe or two, but not the tea, Alina. I mean, I do kind of like that new lavender chamomile blend. Anyway, you are barking up the wrong tree. Good day, Miss T. Charlie walked away, effectively ending the conversation. Miss T and Mr. Coffee left the bakery and stood outside, taking in the warmth of the afternoon and feeling frustrated. Their investigation seemed to hit a dead end. Mr. Coffee, ever the optimist, suggested that they review the security footage, but Miss T had to admit there were no security cameras at the tea cafe. No security cameras? Miss T, you know that you're basically inviting all of the tea thieves in town to a free buffet, don't you? Joked Mr. Coffee, rolling her eyes but smiling. I never thought I needed a security camera. Not all of us are as distrusting as you are, Mr. Coffee. Chuckling, Mr. Coffee said, Come on, I'll buy you a cup of tea at this great cafe next door. Despite the teasing, there was a growing sense of mutual support and friendship between the two of them. Not only that, but Miss T couldn't help but notice how Mr. Coffee's eyes crinkled just a little when he smiled, or how he always seemed to know when she needed a laugh. And Mr. Coffee, well, he was beginning to realize that good things started with tea. A few days went by, and the mystery continued to develop. The missing teas were always the rare blends, the ones Miss T made in small batches. But then, one day, they finally reached a turning point. It was quiet afternoon when Miss T was baking cookies in the kitchen. Mr. Coffee was there too, pacing back and forth, recapping all of the information that they had gathered that week. I just wish I could figure out what we're missing, Mr. Coffee said frustratedly. I hope we find out soon, because this just doesn't make any sense, replied Miss T as she pulled a tray of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies out of the oven. Just then, Mr. Coffee swiftly walked over, grabbed a hot cookie off the tray, and shoved it right into his mouth. Hey, Miss T chided. What are you doing? Those are really hot. Oh my God, Mr. Coffee said, muffled and covering his mouth. See, that's what you get, she said playfully. Mr. Coffee stumbled around the kitchen, the hot cookie still burning his mouth too much to speak. Suddenly, he backed up, tripped, and fell on the kitchen floor, and the cookie went flying out of his mouth. Oh my gosh, Sean! Miss T shouted, rushing to the floor to check on him. Are you all right? Laughing, Mr. Coffee responded. Ow. Oh, yeah, now that the cookie's out of my mouth. Oh my goodness, are you sure you're all right? Miss T asked, worry still evident in her voice. Mr. Coffee paused, looking at her. Yes, I'm okay. Really? They stared at each other for a moment. Then Mr. Coffee reached around him, Though what in the world did I trip over? He picked up an open book bag and passed it to her. Is this yours? Miss T took the bag and examined it. No, this is Maddie's book bag. Maddie? The shy little girl who comes to the cafe to learn how to bake muffins and blend tea? Yeah, Miss T said distractedly as she looked through Maddie's backpack. Why does she have my tea in her bag? What? Said Mr. Coffee, more surprised and alert than before. Standing up, Miss T responded, My teas are in her bag. Oh my gosh, Maddie's the one who's been taking my teas? Mr. Coffee stood up and tried to calm her down. Wait. Why would Maddie steal your teas? I have no idea, but I think that Maddie may be our tea thief. Just then, Maddie happily entered the kitchen. Those cookies smell delicious, Miss T. May I take one home with me when I leave? My mom should be here any minute. She paused and stared at Miss T and Mr. Coffee. What's wrong? Miss T calmly replied, Mr. Coffee just tripped over your book bag. Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought I left it over on the side, Maddie replied nervously. Maddie, when I tripped, your bag popped open and we found this, Mr. Coffee said solemnly, holding open the bag for Maddie to see. Maddie became upset. She panicked and started to cry. Miss T sadly asked, Madeline Johnson, why are my teas in your bag? I'm so sorry, Miss T, barely able to hold back her tears. Mr. Coffee calmly led the young girl to sit down in a chair. Here, Maddie, have a seat and tell us what happened. Maddie, still teary, said, My dad lost his job and I thought I could sell your tea to make some money to help my family. Placing her hand over her heart, Miss T crooned, Oh, Maddie. I'm so sorry, Miss T. Stealing is wrong, Maddie, Miss T replied. I forgive you, but I'm going to have to tell your parents what you did. With her head down, Maddie silently nodded. Can I talk to you for a second? Mr. Coffee whispered to Miss T. Leaving Maddie sulking in the chair, the two of them walked to the other end of the kitchen. Mr. Coffee hesitated. So, I have an idea. What's that? Asked Miss T. What if you allowed Maddie to work off her debt here at the cafe? You can use this to teach her a lesson, working to pay back the cost of the tea that she stole. What do you think? Yes, I like that idea. Miss T nodded slowly with a smile. Good, Mr. Coffee smiled back at her. Miss T? Maddie called from the corner. Miss T walked over to where the young girl sat. Maddie, Mr. Coffee just gave me a great idea about how we can work this all out, she said with a smile. It was 1 week later, and the tea cafe was busy as ever. Maddie takes a customer order, writing it down on a notepad. That's 2 avocado toasts and 2 lavender chamomile teas coming right up. Since Maddie started working at the tea cafe, she has really been blossoming and coming out of her shell. And because she is such a quick learner, Miss T is now calling Maddie her little apprentice. Plus, there were no more missing teas, and the cafe felt much more lively with Maddie's youthful energy all around. Just then the door chimed and Mr. Coffee walked in. "Miss T, Mr. Coffee is here," she sang sweetly. Miss T appeared from the kitchen. "Thanks for the announcement, Maddie," Mr. Coffee chuckled. "Anytime, Mr. Coffee," Maddie sang as she skipped away to the kitchen. "She is a ball of energy, isn't she?" Mr. Coffee asked, chuckling with a smile. "She certainly is," said Miss T. Working together to solve the mystery of the missing teas has brought Mr. Coffee and Miss T closer together. Their daily chats became more frequent, their conversations more playful. There was an unspoken connection between them now, something that hinted at more than just friendship, though neither of them would ever admit it. One evening, after waiting for Miss T to close up the shop, Mr. Coffee lingered by the door, waiting for her to complete her closing tasks. "You know, Miss T, solving that mystery with you was way more fun than I expected," said Mr. Coffee. Smiling, Miss T replied, "Yeah, maybe we should solve mysteries more often." "You mean open a detective agency and solve crimes?" Mr. Coffee said jokingly. "Sure, why not?" laughed Miss T. "Mr. Coffee and Miss T, super sleuths," he joked. "Solving small tea crimes in a small town," Miss T bantered. Mr. Coffee continued, "Tea thieves beware. We will work day and night to bring you to justice." Laughing, "Oh my gosh, could you imagine us working together every day?" Miss T laughed. Mr. Coffee replied, "I'd actually really like that." They paused, sharing a look, a moment of possibility. The mystery of the missing teas was solved, but perhaps a new adventure was now brewing. And so, as night settled over the town, they smiled and strolled together into the evening, Miss T and Mr. Coffee peacefully enjoying each other's company. And thus ends the case of the missing teas. The end. I do hope that you enjoyed this story. Join us again next time for another tale from our Bedtime Tea collection. And be sure to take a listen to our Bedtime Tea One More Steep Before Sleep podcast to hear other bedtime stories. Sleep well, jolly tea drinkers, and may your cups overflow with joy and peace.